All right, thanks everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today as we talk about what's new in Azure WAF. My name is David Frazee, and I'm a product manager on the customer experience and engineering team for Azure Network Security. Joining me today is my colleague Saleem Bseeu. We're excited to talk about these new features here, since we always get really a lot of great feedback from this community. So it's a really great opportunity for us to come back and share, some of the new releases that are coming out, just based off your feedback. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them into the chat as we present. We have a great team that's joining us today that will be monitoring the chat and will try to answer as many questions as they can. And as mentioned before, if we have time at the end, we'll take some moments to address any unanswered questions or questions that, would really be beneficial to the community. All right. Oh, live mishaps, right? So let's cover the agenda for today. We'll first start by doing a general overview of the Azure WAF on Application Gateway. So rate limiting rules, they've already been available for use with Azure WAF on Azure Front Door, and sensitive data protection is currently available for Azure WAF on Application Gateway today. So really the focus will be on that application delivery platform. But after our overview, we'll talk about the rate limit functionality on Azure WAF or App Gateway. We'll cover some potential use cases and how you can configure this feature. And then Saleem will kick off a quick demo to show how the rules work and look in the Azure portal. Next, we'll review sensitive data protection and how we can use log scrubbing rules to prevent accidental information leakage from your Azure WAF logs. And then Saleem will then take over and demonstrate how these log scrubbing rules will work in the Azure portal. Lastly, we'll do a Q&A if time permits. So let's get started with our overview on Azure WAF for Application Gateway. So first of all, why would we even need a web application firewall for applications that we publish, either to the internet or even locally? Well, there are quite a few different attack types we see commonly hit web applications. We see DDoS attacks at layer 3, 4, and layer 7. We see malicious bot attacks where bots are used to scrape data, scan, and look for vulnerabilities. And we also see web application specific attacks. These attacks comprise of SQL injections, cross-site scripting, remote file inclusions, and more. These attacks can be costly to an organization. And outside of the obvious financial loss that an organization will be faced with, there is a potential that the trust and reputation of a company is damaged following a severe cybersecurity attack. We can mitigate these risks and close off vulnerabilities with tools like the Azure WAF. So the Azure WAF is a layer 7 firewall that provides centralized protection of your web applications, both internal and external facing, from common vulnerabilities. These applications can be in Azure, they can be on premises, or even another cloud provider, as long as we have some way to communicate with that backend endpoint. When enabled with services such as Azure DDoS protection and Azure Firewall, the Azure WAF can be used to implement a zero trust network security architecture in the Azure cloud. The WAF can be enabled either on the global edge with Azure Front Door or at a regional level using the Application Gateway. And today we're going to be really focused on the Application Gateway. It is platform managed, allowing teams to focus on custom rule creation and exclusions when needed. Managed rule sets are already predefined for OWASP top 10 protection, bot protection, and more with the introduction of the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center rules, or what we call Mystic rules. It quickly responds to new attacks that are identified by publishing new rules in the known CVE's rule group if an already existing rule does not block by default. So Azure WAF also has a custom rules engine. These custom rules allow you to create your own rules that are evaluated for each request that passes through the WAF. You can define your own rules based on geo-filtering, IP restriction, HTTP parameter filtering, and size restrictions as well. The Azure WAF also has DevOps integration, ARM templates, bicep files, REST API, PowerShell. These are all methods that you can use to easily build, deploy, and manage the Azure WAF. And then lastly, the WAF provides metrics and logs through Azure Monitor that will assist in your incident investigation. So these can be ingested by Microsoft Sentinel or another third-party SIEM. All right, so now we'll talk about these rate limiting custom rules. So if you're following industry news, you're probably familiar with the most recent surge of HTTP DDoS attacks. So HTTP DDoS attacks are a type of cyber attack that aim to overwhelm a web server or application with a large number of HTTP requests, such as GETs or POSTs. These requests are often sent by a botnet, which is a network of compromised devices that are controlled by an attacker or a group of attackers. The HTTP DDoS attacks can exploit different versions of the HTTP protocol, like 1.1 and HTTP 2. HTTP 2 is a newer version that offers improved performance and efficiency, but it can also be used by or be abused by attackers to launch more powerful attacks. For example, just recently, a campaign of hyper-volumetric HTTP DDoS attacks exploited a vulnerability in HTTP 2 called Rapid Reset, which allowed attackers to send millions of requests per second to targeted servers. But to kind of ease your mind here, this flaw has already been mitigated already within the application gateway and front door platform, so that amplification vector of this attack is actually stopped. Though this is still a flood of requests that targets a single endpoint, you still need to utilize various methods to protect your application, such as using a web application firewall and implementing rate limiting rules. So rate limiting rules, they enable you to detect and block abnormally high levels of traffic destined for your application. By using rate limiting on Application Gateway WAF, you can mitigate denial of service attacks, protect against clients that have accidentally been misconfigured to send large volumes of requests in a short period, and then control traffic rates to your site from specific geographies. Like the functionality that exists in WAF on Azure Front Door, customers will be able to create custom rules with the rule type of rate limit and set a threshold and time window for requests. When requests exceed the threshold within the chosen time window, traffic matching the rule will be rate limited. Azure WAF on Application Gateway also introduces group by user session as an additional control for customers, which specifies how requests are grouped and counted for matching a rate limit rule. This functionality will greatly enhance the flexibility and power of the rules when mitigating distributed floods, as rules can be created that group traffic by variables other than just the source IP address. So the supported group by variables will be client address, geolocation, and none. So we'll start with client address. So this is the default setting for the rate limit rules for the application gateway, or the WAF on Application Gateway. With the client address setting, each rate limit threshold and mitigation apply independently to every unique source IP address. This allows customers to block traffic from a particular client IP that exceeds their normal pattern or the normal pattern. For geolocation, traffic is then grouped by geography based on a geo match on the client IP address. This allows customers to define rate limit rules per geo or region basis and allow to block on any type of anomalous traffic there. You can do, is not statements if or whatnot. And I believe Saleem will go into a little bit more further details in the demo. For none, all of the traffic is grouped together and counted against the threshold of the rate limit rule. So when the threshold is breached, the action triggers against all traffic matching the rule and does not maintain independent counters for each client IP or geography. So this is a quite powerful mitigation technique to define a global rule and block attacks based on condition like rate limit beyond X traffic coming from user agent Y, or block suspicious traffic based on a URL. So also with the rate limit custom rules, it comes with an enhanced sliding window algorithm to determine when traffic has breached the threshold and needs to be dropped. All right, so now that we've reviewed some of the rate limiting on Application Gateway, I'll pass it to Saleem for a quick demo.
Thank you, David. Okay, so for the next part, we're going to start with a demo for the Application Gateway WAF rate limiting. Before starting, or at least some idea about the setup, we have here this resource group, which I'm going to use for our setup. And you can see here we have the first Application Gateway. Then we have the WAF policy, which is attached to this Application Gateway. The logs, we're going to send them to Log Analytics workspace. We also have here the public IP, which is attached to our Application Gateway, the VNet, and of course the app service where we are sending the traffic to, and we have our Linux with the web server running over here. So for this demo on the rate limiting, I'm going to start with how to configure the rate limiting, the different types that we currently have and that you can utilize for different use cases. Then we're going to look at how to trigger it. So we're going to do it with our website, which is running on this app service. And of course, the WAF is in between running as a reverse proxy. And then at the end, we're going to look at the logs So we can confirm and we can investigate also like exactly what happened, which custom rule, and confirm that it was the custom rule that we configured for the rate limiting. Okay, so let's start. So first thing, before even going to the WAF, we're gonna start with the application gateway. And the reason is because of the logging. So first thing we need to make sure, of course, is the logging is enabled. Now, even though the WAF policy is a different resource, and then you attach it to the application gateway, the logging itself needs to be enabled from the application gateway resource. So here under the diagnostic settings for our application gateway instance, you can see here 3 categories. So the last one, which is application gateway firewall log, you need to have this one enabled, and you need to send it to your, for example, analytics workspace, storage, event hub, or some partner solution that you're using. So make sure always to have this enabled, and you're sending the logs, so then you can investigate and confirm it. So for the next one, we have here the public IP. So this is the public IP we will use, and we have this DNS attached to it. And this is also what we are using for the website, which we are testing. So next, let's go to the application gateway WAF policy. On the application gateway WAF policy, you can see here under overview that we have it in prevention. So later when I show you the test, you will see that I will be prevented from even accessing. And if you are testing this yourself and you want to, just to see the logs or maybe just to see if it's activated, you can also switch it to detection mode. So let's go over, so under settings, we will go to custom rules. From the custom rules here, we can configure the rate limiting, and you can see here we have 2 custom rules. So first one we have, it's just a match rule, which is matching specific conditions that we have here. And the second one is a rule limit type. So I'm gonna open this one, and I'm gonna show you what we have configured over here. So first thing is the custom rule name, right? Definitely like best practice, make sure that you have a clear and unique name for it, because later when we are looking at the logs, you want to make sure that it's matching the rate limiting rule and not matching some other custom rule that you have. So it's easier to verify. So enable rule, then we have the rule type here. So here is where you can enable the rate limit, or change it to the rule rate limit rule type. Then we set the priority. In this case, we have it at 12, which is after our first custom rule. So if it doesn't match that one, goes to our rate limiting. And now we come to the rate limiting part. So the first thing we have here is the rate limit duration. Rate limit duration is the window. So the rate limit window where from the first matched packet that you have for that conditions, right? So the window we have right now is 1 minute, and under the window we have the rate limit threshold, so the number of requests, and here we have configured 3. Basically what this means is that if there are 3 requests in the or more than 3 requests in this 1 minute window, it will start the rate limiting, so it will start to drop the traffic. And then we have here the group limit traffic bio, right? So here we have 3 types. We have the client address, geolocation, and none. For this test, I'm going to show you the client address, which is the source IP, that is where the traffic is coming from, right? So basically, this is the logic. If in that 1 minute window, there are more than 3 packets from this same unique IP address, it will start blocking it. And we have a condition here of matching a variable request URI, but we don't have a specific login, so it's any request URI. And then at the end here, you can see then deny traffic. So you need to make sure that this one is enabled, and this is our rule. So now let's see how this works. Of course, in a real world environment, you probably will not have a such a short threshold, which is just 3 requests per minute. But for this test and for this reason, like we're going to use this example and show you how it works. So now let's go to our website, which is the OWASP shop. And what I'm going to try here, you can see under logging. So I'm going to try to log in. So I have this made up username, email, which is just for this testing, and I'm going to put here some password. So the login will not work this is just for the testing, and I want to see if the rate limiting is triggered. So I'm gonna start with one try, and you can see invalid email or password. I'm gonna try again, same thing. Third time, the same thing. And the fourth time, which is when the rate limiting rule kicked in, and you can see we have a different error. And from here, you don't have that much information, but that's why we have the logging enabled, and we can investigate and see more, like, look for more information over there. However, you can see here very clearly that after three requests, the same minute, the rate limiting started, and we start getting this message. So for the next step, let's have a look at the logs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the workspace that I mentioned earlier, and this is where we are sending all the logs. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to run this last query, which is looking for the application gateway firewall logs. And this is the WAF logs, right? I'm going to put just half an hour to filter it out. And let's see if we already have something. And okay, yeah, perfect. So this is the log, and this is triggered because of the access denied. And let's open it so we can see more information. So the first thing we want to do is we want to see the rule ID, and here you can see rate limit logging. So this is the name of the custom rule that we created, and you can see here that it matched that rule, right? And you can see also, like, for example, here the client IP, where it was coming from, and the important thing here, the message, right? So the message, we can see the access denied with code 403. So 403, which means that we received the request and we are denying it. And we have here the pattern match, which is the login and the request URI, which we had at the custom rule. So this, logs give you some information, so which rule it match, and you also that your rate limiting is working, and you can also do the same from the metrics. So now this is one of the use cases, and in this use case we use the the unique source IP. However, going back to the WAF policy, you can also use different types, and let me show you. So if I'm going to create here, add custom rules, I'm going to create another rule, and I'm going to go to rate limit, right? And in this case, the group limit traffic by, I'm gonna put here geolocation. So this is another example, another use case, but of course the use cases really depend on what you have configured, depending on your web server, on the where the traffic is usually coming from, and also, for example, if a specific URL shouldn't have more than specific amount of traffic. Now another use case. And this one, for example, we're using the geolocation, right? So for geolocation, let's say we want to, so we know that, most of the clients, for example, are in the US, and most of the requests are coming from the US. So if there's a huge amount of traffic coming from outside, it's unusual, and it's most probably a DDoS attack, right? Or anything, some malicious intent like that. So in that case, we want to use the geolocation, and what we want to do in that case, let's say I'm going to put here the geolocation, and for the match variable, I'm going to put the remote address. Remote address means that the source IP where the request is coming from. And what I'm going to do under operation, I'm going to put is not, so is not. And under here, let's say in our use case, like for example, we know that all of our clients are in the US. I'm going to select United States here. So this custom rule basically will if the traffic is not coming from the US, then it will do the rate limit, and it will group it by country or geolocation, and there will be a window of 1 minute for 100 requests, right? So this is one example that you can use. Of course, you can also add another condition, and you can, for example, set this at for example, specific URL that you have, some specific page or user agent, right? And so this is the second configuration you can do, and you can use it for many use cases. Third one is none. So none basically groups all the traffic together. It doesn't use the specific source IP, it doesn't use the geolocation, it groups it all together. This is powerful, but you need to be careful in how you use it. And one example, for example, like if you know your environment very well and you know that a specific page, like maybe some payment page or a login page, and like there shouldn't be, like, let's say, more than like 10,000 packet per minute or something like that, right? So what you do in that case, you can have a string here, and match variable, I'm going to select the request URI. So request URI is the URL where the destination where the requester is asking for, right? And in this case, we can here put the match value. You can put the URL of that page you have, like the payment or login, right? And so in that case, what we will configure here is a rate limit for specifically for that page, and make sure that there's not a huge amount of packets coming there and making the system unavailable. So these are some of the use cases you can use, and of course there are a lot more. But this is the test and how you can see it and how you can also look at it from the logging part. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And also we will have Q&A later, so you can also have a chance to ask it there. So by finishing this, I'm going to give it back to David, where he will speak about the next feature.
All right, thanks, Saleem. Yeah, I'll start sharing my screen here again. All right, so let's talk about sensitive data protection for Azure WAF on Application Gateway now. All right, so similar to the rise of HTTP DDoS attacks, there's no shortage of news articles that talk about sensitive data leaks across many industries. So these data leaks could actually originate from a sophisticated cyber attack that utilizes a layer 7 DDoS attack, followed by some secondary web application attacks. The cost of a data breach today can be significant. According to the IBM cost of a data breach report for 2023, the global average cost of a data breach was $4.45 million, which is a 15% increase over the past 3 years. This cost includes both direct and indirect expenses suffered by the breached organization. Now, the Azure Application Gateway provides customers with the ability to log WAF event data for future debugging and analysis. But because this data is stored in the logs as plain text, and because some of the data getting stored might contain sensitive customer personally identifiable information, or PII, our customers wanted the ability to scrub certain fields from their data before it gets stored into log files. For example, if the WAF is triggered by a suspicious login attempt, it might log the username and password used during login. In this example, the app owner would want to prevent that username and password from being stored within the log. This same example would be true for other scenarios in PII, such as authorization credentials, credit card details, or even IP address. So the WAF log scrubbing tool helps you remove sensitive data from your WAF logs. It works by using a rule engine that allows you to build custom rules to identify specific portions of a request that may contain sensitive data. Normally, when a WAF rule is triggered, the WAF logs the details of the request in clear text or plain text form. If the portion of the request triggering the WAF rule contains sensitive data, such as the customer password, that sensitive data is viewable by anyone that has access to the WAF logs. And then if you were to export these WAF logs out to a third-party SIEM or some type of other log collector, anyone that would have access to those logs as well would be able to see this type of information. With log scrubbing rules, once a match is identified, the tool scrubs that information from your logs and it replaces it with these asterisks. And then so really the following match variables are available to use, and it's going to be your request IP address or the client IP address, request header names, request cookie names, request argument names, or pretty much, request argument names. This would really be in the URI there. Post argument names, these are going to be part of the body, and then request JSON argument names. So these are going to be if the body is sent in JSON form. It is important to know that selectors are case insensitive for request header names for that variable only. All other match variables are going to be case sensitive. And then with that, I will hand it right back over to Saleem, and he'll give us a demonstration of these log scrubbing rules.
Thank you, David. Okay, so let's start with our second demo today, and this one is about the sensitive data or log scrubbing. So going back over to our application gateway WAF policy, right? So the sensitive data, you will find it under settings and sensitive data over here. I'm gonna click on this, and you can see here the options that you have. So in our case, of course, we already have some configuration done, and I'm going to go over them in a bit. And you can here see that you can enable it or disable it also with just this toggle. So you don't have to remove all of them if you want to disable it for a while. Um, so the first one we will start with, and I will also show you today, is the request header name. So the match variable under here will match this variable, and then you have the selector, which is, for example, here the user agent, and there's the value inside, right? So this value will be removed or won't be visible in the logs when you have it enabled. And in this case, we will see later that the user agent won't be visible. And we have also here a request, for example, cookie name, so the cookie itself, password, comment page, and the important one also request IP address, which I had it disabled because of the previous demo. And I'm gonna enable it for this one. So I'm gonna just enable this one and save it over here. And this will enable the configuration. So the configuration for sensitive data is pretty simple. You select the variable. If it, the operator, you can use equal here, and the selector where you want to remove the value in the logs, right? And of course, same as the last one, you definitely need to have the logging enabled. So the application gateway firewall logging enabled in the application gateway, so you can see the logging and you can see also what was scrubbed. So for this test, I'm going to be using the Postman, which is here. So the Postman, I'm going to use a few in here requests that we already have imported from before, and I'm going to show you how to use it. Now, for the specific demo, it's about the sensitive data. However, you can also see here and learn a bit more about how the OS rules work in WAF and how you can trigger them if you want to test it or get familiar with how Azure WAF works. So without further ado, let's start with our first request. So the first one, and as I showed you earlier in the configuration, I'm going to start with the request header name. So in this case, and you can see here under the headers, I have the key user agent, and I have put the value here of data chaos. So data chaos is a known vulnerability scanner, and the OWASP rules on the WAF will block, if it sees this, it will block it. And we want to see how that looks in the logs. And one more note here, the WAF logs it will only get generated if there is an event, if there is a security event, which means that if there's just normal traffic, didn't trigger WAF, you will not see it under that specific logs, and you will see it under the application gateway. So for our first test, as I said, we're gonna use the data chaos. Under domain here, I'm gonna send it to our DNS name for the public IP for the application gateway and our website. And I'm gonna send it now. So the answer we should get is forbidden. Yeah, so this is the correct one, 403, which means that the server, or in this case, the WAF received the request and it found it malicious, so it blocked the traffic, right? Now, looking at this, we know that it's blocked, but we can see more. So we're gonna go to the logs or our workspace, log analytics workspace, and we're gonna search for the specific logs. So I'm gonna run the same query that I ran earlier, which is simply just looking for this category, which is WAF, and I'm gonna run it, and let's see what it will show us here. So we see a few new logs, and the one we want is found user agent. So I'm gonna open this one, and let's have a look at it. So the first thing that we want to look at, of course, is, for example, the if it the action it matched, and we can see here that the details data found within the request header user agent, and you can see an asterisk here. So the user agent value is scrubbed off, or it's removed, because in this case we have configured it from the sensitive data in WAF to be removed because it's a sensitive data and we don't want to log it in our organization in that case. You can see here that the security or the WAF mitigation still works. So it's still protecting the web server from different types of attacks. However, at the same time, the logs it has the sensitive data, in this case, the user agent scrubbed off. And the same thing, also, if you look up here, the client IP. So the client IP is the source IP, right? Is the source IP where, in this case, like for the postman, it's me. I'm sending the request, right? And you can see this is also scrubbed off because in the policy under the IP, I have it enabled, so it will not show here. Now this shows us how the log scrubbing works for user agent. Now some more details about the log itself. So why it was matched. So we can see here details file, and we can see that the pattern match from file scanners agents data, right? At request header was matched, and this is the user agent. So this means that this specific rule matched against a file where we have the list of user agents that we think or that are malicious, right? Now, if I wanted to learn more, right, and if I wanted to say, hey, how exactly it was matched and why, right? What we can do is we can look up this specific code and see how it compares to the official OWASP GitHub page. So I have it open here, and one of my colleagues, or we have it also in our blog post, can provide it. So this is let me zoom in here a bit. This is the core rule set GitHub page, and we can find more information here about specific OWASP rules, right? So the one we just matched was 913, and if I go down here, we can see it. So request 913 scanner detection, right? So it matched this specific rule, and this rule has a few smaller ones, and the one specifically we matched was this one. So this is a user agent PM from file scanners user agent. So the user agent that we used, which was data chaos agent, which was from this file. And to find it, I can simply go here, go down, and it should be somewhere around scanner user agents data. Let me click on this one, and then here we can just look for it. So I'm gonna search for the specific scanner agent that we had here, and let's just confirm it and go back here, and we can see, so it's data chaos, copy it, and I'm gonna do a quick search here, and we can see that this is here in this file, and it's under vulnerability scanner. So we know the reason why it was matched, and we know why the OWASP rule was activated. So this is an example of a user agent. Let's go to another use case, and in this case, we're gonna do the cookie itself. So for this GET request, there's nothing specific in the headers or anything like this. But in this case, we will use a cookie. So I'm gonna open this here under cookie, and I'm gonna put here the domain name that we have. So it's for the public IP. So I'm gonna add this domain name, and then so I'm gonna go add a cookie here, and for the cookie value, which is this one, let me change this to 1, and I'm gonna put here a malicious cookie that it will trigger the OWASP rule set. So I'm gonna enable this here, close this, and I'll send it. And we can see here it was also forbidden, so the access was also denied. And now let's go to our logging so we can confirm that it matched the right rule. We just close this one, and I'm gonna run this again. Okay, so let's give it a few more seconds. Usually takes around 10 to 20 seconds for the logging to show here. And for the next one, we should see the SQL cookie. So we see new logs here, and we can see the SQL injection over here. So I'm going to open this one, and I'm going to scroll down here, and we can see it. So we can see that it was a request. So this is the specific OWASP rule set, which it hit, and it's the application attack SQL. And under the details data, we can see that found within request cookies, cookie 1. So this is the cookie that I added. The value inside, you can see it's scrubbed because under sensitive data, we have it enabled, and removing the value or scrubbing the value from this specific selector, right, which is cookie under -1. And going up here, you can see some more details, for example, like the SQL injection attack detected, and also the specific message. So this tells us that, also like how this attack works, how the OWASP rule set blocks it, and the sensitive data removes the specific variables, the selected variables where we have selected. So this is another example using cookie. Now let's go back to the Postman, and in this case, I'm gonna use the arguments. So in this case, it's gonna be under headers, and I'm gonna go here. I'm going to open it. So for this one, it's going to be under the parameters. So this one is going to be the page itself, right? So the value in the page is the one that is will trigger the OWASP rule, and you can also see it over here. So this is the specific website we have and the page. And I'm going to send this and see if it's triggered, and we can see, yeah, this also works. And basically, this one will look for a different type of an attack. And we want to see if this data, the page, which in some cases we want to scrub it, is scrubbed off and as part of the sensitive data. So let's go back to the logs, and I'm going to run it again. So let's see. It should take a few more seconds. And then we should be able also to see it here. And perfect. So here it is, and you can already see it, like, even from this column that request URI, it's removed, right? So we can see the page, and the reason is because under sensitive data we have it selected and it's scrubbed off. So to look at the specific attack, I'm gonna open this one, and we can see this one is also SQL injection attack, and the reason, or actually, wait a second. Yeah, sorry. So it's this one, and the specific reason is under the page. So the details here, you can see that, found within which argument, and you can see that it's for the page. This is the parameter. So in this case, we can see that it was triggered by this page that we put in, and also the specific data was scrubbed off. And this is another example of sensitive data. And so these are a few examples. I'm going to show you just one more, and for this one, I'm going to use the post argument. So in this case, it's going to be specifically in the comment, and this is what's going to trigger the OWASP rule set, and it's not going to be in the header. So I'm going to first remove the cookies so we don't make the same mistake as last time. So doesn't get triggered, and I'm gonna send this one. So this one should be the cross-scripting rule set that it should match, and it will go for this specific URL, which is a contact, and we're gonna go to logging and see if it's here. I'm gonna run it. Okay, so it's still looking for it. Okay, so I think, yeah, so you can see there's a few logs here, and for this specific one, it should be under the XSS attack found, and we can see here. So under details, you can see specifically that the argument comment was removed. And if you remember, and I'm gonna go back here to our configuration, you can see that we have a variable or match variable, which is request for post argument names. And we have specifically said that for selecting the comment, so any value under the comment should be scrubbed off. And if I go to the logs here, we can see that under comment scrubbed off, but the attack was still brought down and packet was dropped, so the application is still safe. So this is a few examples of showing you how the sensitive data works, and also show you a bit about how you can test using different OS rules and test the WAF that you have, right? Now, everything that I did and all this setup is actually available to you. David has created a GitHub page here, and here you can have the Postman collection. So this is the Postman collection that I was just using to do these attacks, and also the deployment template, all available here. So if you're interested and you want to test this yourself, you can just go here, you can import the Postman request that you can see here, the variables, everything, and then you can also just deploy this whole setup that we have with the website, app service, application gateway, WAF, and everything, and you can test it yourself. So if you're interested into testing or knowing more about WAF, about sensitive data, or also testing the rate limiting, you can simply use this GitHub link, which is available, and one of my colleagues will also provide this in the comments. Okay, so with this, we finished the last demo that we have today. I'm gonna give it back here to Valen and open the floor for any questions if somebody has any questions.
Thank you, Saleem, and David as well. There's been quite some questions that the team answered already, and great feedback as well on the sensitive data. There was actually a couple of feedbacks that we asked the folks to provide direct feedback on the product feature survey. One of them was, what if we want to see sensitive data later on, like for log scrubbing enabled ones, and can we change the backend or WASP rule set of configurations file as a WAF user? So great feedback, and thank you for that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, for deeper conversations on how you could potentially influence our product designs, as well as have access to the private previews, and as well as learn about our roadmaps, you can join our private preview community at aka.ms/join private community CCP. The link has been shared earlier, so if you scroll up, you'll be able to find one. The one question that is has not been answered, and maybe you have an answer for that one. Do you have any guidance for managed service providers to help us manage this for multiple clients?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think, one of the best ways, for like the guidance that we could provide for this, is to use some form of infrastructure as code when you are a managed service provider and you're going to manage multiple deployments for multiple clients. So when it comes to the sensitive data scrubbing or the log scrubbing rules, and when it comes to these rate limit custom rules that you can create as well, these can all be defined using an ARM template, a bicep file, PowerShell scripts, CLI scripts, and Terraform as well, right? So if you need to, say, replicate a standard rate limiting type rule set, or you need to replicate some standard sensitive data log scrubbing rules so that your clients will have, just the same set throughout, and maybe every now and then you would have to make some changes. The best way to do this is to use infrastructure as code and be able to reuse those templates over and over, and then just make, maybe minor changes for maybe new deployments or for an existing customer as well. But our main guidance for managing these type of rules and the Azure WAF, as well as all of the network security products, is to use infrastructure as code when you start to get to that scale. And actually, Valen, to kind of touch on one of the things that you had mentioned before, when it came to, hey, we want to see the data later. We want to see the data later, once we started to use these log scrubbing rules. So yeah, of course. So let's say we have a request comes in and it is a malicious request, and we can't really actually see what the match was, right? Because it was scrubbed. If you needed to see that in the future, today you would not be able to see that because it was scrubbed from the plain text format before it was ever written to the actual log analytics workspace, or it was written to some type of log. But in the future, if you wanted to then be able to see new requests that came in, if you wanted to see what was coming in, you would just simply have to disable the rule, and any following requests would be able to come, in that plain text form, and you would be able to see. So really, the other thing I really want to touch on when it comes to sensitive data protection and using these log scrubbing rules is to not use it in a way that it would hinder your ability to be able to see the malicious attempts that are coming to you. This is really to prevent sensitive data leakage, or PII, from very sensitive types of, let's say, request keys. And we have our key value pair, so it's very specific keys might be very sensitive, where you would want to, regardless, always hide this type of information. This is really where the log scrubbing rules come into play. Again, you don't want to hinder your ability to find out exactly what happened in your environment by scrubbing all of the actual matches here.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, David, for this detailed elaboration. And thanks, Dean. I see that you also submitted another feedback. We'll take a look at that one and moving on into the next two questions that just came in. What are the resource providers that we need to enable in Azure subscription to use these features?
There should be no type of additional any type of configurations for you to be able to use these features today. If you deploy an Azure WAF on Application Gateway, these will be available to you today with no additional necessary steps or configurations.
Okay, thank you. The next one goes, are there any articles, guidance about integration of WAF with Purview data loss prevention?
Not to my knowledge today, I have not read or seen any, but I also have not researched to see if there's been anything that's been written or documented with that today. Saleem, have you seen anything?
Yeah, I also don't have any specific data regarding that. Yeah, nothing comes to my mind right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that concludes all the questions. Thank you, David and Saleem, for being our guests today and for sharing this great information with our community. And also would like to thank all of our SMEs who helped us here with answering the questions and providing some resourceful information. And to all the listeners out there on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desires to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. We believe that together we can make a global impact, so please join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. And also, please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered, or other product-related questions to Azure Network Security, feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/ans community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.